out of the darkness. I opened my eyes in the middle of the night. This doesn't usually happen to me. When I go to bed at night, I sleep through the morning until I'm awakened by the insistent sound of the alarm clock. Or I don't get a good night's sleep. But here I was lifting my eyelids and staring into the darkness. What woke me up? There was a certain feeling, as if something was wrong, as if something had happened. But what? I stretched out my hand in search of my smartphone, which I habitually put on a small nightstand next to the bed. It was impenetrable darkness, not a single light, and I even pulled back the curtains, hoping that the light from the lamppost would penetrate the room and dilute the thick, lingering gloom that was giving my body goosebumps. It wasn't that I was afraid of the dark. No, I wasn't. But in this case, things were a little different. Realizing that the situation outside the window was no different from the one in my apartment, I made an attempt to unlock my phone. "What?" I said out loud, at the moment when all my attempts to unlock the gadget were in vain. Strange. I remembered exactly that the battery charge was just under 100%. Maybe it was broken or glitchy? Okay, whatever. I got out of bed and headed toward the door, flicked the switch, but nothing happened. I left the room and walked toward the kitchen by feel and memory, listening to the oppressive silence every now and then. It was unusual because it often happened that I had to go to bed late at night, and I could say with certainty that even close to morning there were sounds outside the window, whether it was the barking of dogs in the distance, or the rumble of cars that occasionally but still pass on the highway, and a lot of other sounds. But not today. The only thing that surrounded me was darkness and grave silence. At the moment when I managed to get to the kitchen table, I took a lighter, which, by the way, always left on the same place out of habit. I flicked the wheel. Nothing. Not a single spark. The second attempt was as futile as all the subsequent ones. I started digging in the drawers of the table in search of a candle and matches, which I had stocked up long ago, as it often happened that the electricity was cut off, and sitting in the darkness was such a pleasure. But what was my surprise when the matches simply refused to light up, as if some invisible force prevented it and tried very hard to keep me in the dark. I spit on all this and moved toward the front door, with the intention of going out into the entryway to scout the situation. The moment the door opened, I saw the same picture as in the apartment itself. Darkness, as dark as the eye could see, and an oppressive silence. Yes, I forgot to say, I live on the first floor, which, in principle, and played an important role in my story. If my apartment were even a floor higher, I can say with certainty that I did not go out, and perhaps I would not be writing this now, but alas, nothing can change. Intuition told me, no, not like that. It screamed, go into the apartment. Something is wrong here. But curiosity overcame common sense. I decided to go outside, which I later regretted very much. Slowly, step by step, I descended from the landing and, finding myself in front of a massive iron door, I opened it without a second thought. Already painfully familiar darkness was waiting for me behind the door. I could not see absolutely nothing, not even my outstretched hand, not to mention the neighboring house, the bench next to the entrance, bushes and everything else that surrounded our house. Realizing that I wouldn't be able to find out anything, I went back to my den and locked the door, and then took small steps towards my room, as suddenly behind me there was a strange sound. At that moment I stood still and listened. A feeling as if someone was drilling me with a stare, a sense of stalking was present. Tsk! My heart went into heels, and my body was covered with goosebumps. Chock! It was just around the corner. Pouring sweat, on shaky legs, knocking everything in my path, hitting the wall and cabinets, I flew into my room, closed the door, leaned back, and slowly slid down the door. I tried to catch my breath, and realize what had just happened. And what the hell was that? Tisk, tisk. It sounded under the door, and I covered my mouth with my hands to keep from squeaking. A moment later, there was a quiet pounding on the door, and then slowly, something sharp scratched at it. Open up. I know you're in there. I screamed and crawled on all fours, whimpering toward the bed, sat down next to her, wrapped my arms around her knees while my body shivered like I'd just been out in the bitter cold in just my underwear. Open up, bitch! There was a gruesome hoarse voice outside the door, and then there were heavy blows mixed with growls, sobs, and heartbreaking squeals, and I was almost dying of fear. I sat like that until dawn, and the pounding on the door and the sounds that accompanied it never stopped. Apparently, what had entered my dwelling was very anxious to get at me, and I could not imagine what would have happened to me in such a case. At first light, there was silence, and I decided to go to the door and listen. Realizing that there was no one behind the door, I stepped out of the room and staggered out. The door was in such a state that it looked like a lion pride had been hanging out in my apartment all night, and they were attracted to it. The moment I was in the kitchen, behind me, I heard a tsk, tsk. Turning around, I saw nothing, the same darkness. And then my consciousness left me. Whoever was in there managed to trick me, he tricked me, and took my soul with him. As I was leaving the apartment, I managed to leave the front door open, thus allowing it to come in. It took it as an invitation, which is why it couldn't get into the room, because it can't come in without an invitation. And also, it creates a haze, creates hallucinations, makes you believe in things that can't be and shouldn't be, as happened in my case. And me? I was left without a soul. Yes, I live, if I can put it that way, but it can't be called life. All colors seem to have disappeared. Everything is monotonous. I don't feel taste, smell. I don't enjoy what used to give pleasure. Everything is gray and dull. There are no emotions or feelings. I live with my body, but not with my soul. To hell with this life. Goodbye. P.S. If you ever find yourself in a similar situation, remember, never open the door and do not leave the house, because it is not for nothing they say, "My house is my fortress."